Okay, good afternoon. This is Mark Gross with Data Conversion Laboratory. Uh, with me are Leo Velchikov and Sergey Zelnik, key members of our team that works on 508 documents and digital accessibility. And today we're going to talk about what the issues are in making documents accessible to people with various kinds of disabilities, and specifically with complying with Section 508, which is a federal standard for accessibility. Our agenda today will be, first a little bit of introduction on who Data Conversion Laboratory is, for those of you who are new to us. We're going to talk about what does data accessibility really mean and what does it imply. And it's a bit broader in context than most people think. Why is it important? And some of it is obvious, but it actually applies to a very large population when you really look at it. We're going to have a demonstration of a common reading application, just to show you what that looks like if you haven't seen one of those. And then the bulk of our conversation will be about how do you retrofit existing PDF files so that they're accessible. And we'll end up with some resources that are available to you and a question and answer period. So first, a little bit about DCL. DCL is a woman-owned small business. We're now in our 35th year, headquartered in New York with 65 full-time employees based here, right here in Fresh Meadows, New York, which is located in Queens, just a few miles outside of Manhattan. We're a leading provider of various kinds of services for conversion, data support, and digitization to organizations, companies, the federal government, or various kinds of organizations for whom documents are mission critical. We work with, we're capable of very large-scale projects, multi-vendor projects, and we're known, and this is very important in the 508 world, very sophisticated quality control to make sure that everything works right. We provide a series of services where we're known for scanning and digitizing and conversion. That's part of our name. But a third bullet item over here is the one that's most relevant here, enhancing all kinds of documents so that they're accessible to allow people with disabilities to interact with various documents, websites, and other information technology. Conversion is a lot more than it used to be. A lot of what we do has to do with data mining and big data and metadata extraction. And pretty importantly is automating. As these documents get larger, how do you automate it so it's not all a manual operation? I'm not going to read through here, but this is a catalog of services that we provide regularly as part of our business. As you can see, a part of our conversion services in the upper left-hand side includes all kinds of accessibility and 508 compliance. Just historically, I mean, this has become a big issue recently because, first of all, it's the law and there are various legal statutes, and it's become more and more important. I think the modern age of accessibility started with Ray Kurzweil's reading machine back in 1974, 1975. If you bear with me, I want to just show you a short video of Stevie Wonder seeing the first reading machine. And if this comes up, we should be good.
When there was this thing on the news about this man who had come up with a way that would enable a blind person to be able to read. And I said, this is crazy, this is impossible, I got to meet this person. Obviously, it was a life changer. I mean, for me, it was really, really kind of big, but however big it was, it didn't matter because, listen, for the first time, a blind person would be able to read his or her private information it was an amazing experience.
The current cost of $10,000 to $20,000 makes the machine practical only for libraries, institutions, or rehabilitation centers.
Okay. Right. So that was a very young Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil actually grew up.
He has used the gift that he was given.
Sorry, I didn't turn that off. Ray Kurzweil actually grew up just a couple of miles away from our office here in Queens, New York. And that was Ray Kurzweil, who later went on to invent a whole bunch of things, is credited as being the inventor of OCR. So what you saw there is Stevie Wonder seeing the first machine, and not just the idea that he's able to read his own personal information without somebody having to read it to him was a big deal. Stevie Wonder's been in the news since then. There's a very famous segment in the 2016 Grammys where he still said we need to make every single thing accessible for every person with a disability. Some definitions on this, a document application. This is from several different websites. I think this is coming off the Adobe website. A document application is considered accessible if it meets certain technical criteria and can be used by people with disabilities. And I think this is important. Disabilities are not just blindness. It includes mobility impaired, that they can't reach and they can't move their hands as well as others. They're blind, low vision, deaf, hard of hearing, or have various cognitive impairments. And the point is to make it easier for people with disabilities to use documents and forms with and without the aid of assistive technology, software, and devices. And some of the devices that are available now are screen readers, screen magnifiers, text-to-speech, speech recognition, some of which you even have on your phones today, and braille embossers and refreshable braille displays of various kinds. I think the important point on this previous slide is that many people who are, blindness is obviously what we're talking about, but more people have low vision and have difficulty reading, although they can read somewhat. And so, just a quick, what is Section 508, which is a subject, the title line of our webinar today. So, 508 refers to a section in the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and in 1998 it was amended to make electronic information technology accessible to people with disabilities. It applies to all federal agencies when they develop, procure, maintain, or use any kind of information technology. And under Section 508, agencies must give disabled employees as well as the public access to information comparable to access available to others. And this applies to, so internally it can apply to any federal agency, and anybody, any employee can sue to have access to those kind of materials. Also, the public can sue to have access. And I was just on the phone earlier today with an agency that as a result of a public lawsuit now has to make provisions to be able to make documents accessible. It applies not just to blindness, as you said, blindness, colorblind is an issue, visual impairments, deafness, hearing impairments, and speech impairments, mobility, strength, dexterity, or reach impairments. Why is it important, and why is it in general? Why is it important today? It's become more important over the last few years. First of all, it affects a lot of people. An estimated 10% of the world population experiences some form of disability. And these are United Nations number. I don't know if I think in the United States it's a slightly lower number, but still it is a significant number. It affects 650 million people when you take 10%, of which a little under a third are children. And it's becoming worse because as our population ages, more and more people are affected with various kinds of impairments, especially hearing impairments and vision impairments. So it really affects a lot of people, more than most people think. And also the accessibility standards have been developing over the last few years, over the last 20 years, 25 years, but really more importantly over the last even under 10 years. So there are many such standards. The 508 standard is for the federal government. There's a similar standard called NEMIS, which is for educational materials, and students can sue to have educational materials made available to them. The DAISY format applies to more multimedia and magazine kind of materials, and there's a long list of international conventions. In fact, other countries, specifically in Europe and parts of Asia, are really ahead of the United States in terms of legal requirements enforcing the requirements. And I think a third area is that computer technology today makes it much more feasible than it ever was before. In the 508 statutes themselves, there's an exemption for where it's too difficult to provide these accessible materials. The excuse that it's too difficult is really melting away as technology makes it much more feasible. There's reading software that can read all kinds of electronic documents now. There's OCR-based machines that can read directly from paper. The video we saw before was a very primitive version of it. The equipment is certainly much smaller and more accessible. There's even OCR software that's available to work on smartphones. There are many software packages. Most software packages today allow pre-tagging of materials to make them more accessible. And there are, and this is an area of our business, enhanced processes to retrofit existing documents. So there's a lot of documents, a lot of content out there that is not currently accessible that can be made accessible. It makes it possible to make accessible much of the world's knowledge, which goes back to Stevie Wonder's earlier quote. I just thought it'd be useful to just show you what this is a reading application to show you what that might look like. This is something called
Next Generation Zone Google Chrome window.
Let me just open this up. And this is NVDA, which is a freely accessible package. There are others.
Navigation, preparing. Tomorrow's workforce. List with 4 items visited link passport to success. Passport to success next generation zone. Visited link skip to main content. Visited link home pass out of list heading level 1 passport to success. Your passport to career success will take you start here. Passport worksheet next generation zone. Visited link skip to main. Visited link home passport worksheet out of list heading blank. List with 3 items explore careers and create a plan checkbox check. Explore careers visited link. Learn how to compete in tomorrow and number 30 not checked. Checked. Create a plan visited link. Forms next generation zone. Visited link skip to main content. Visited link home pass log out visited link. Heading level 1 your passport to link download PDF form. Graphic next generation zone. Graphic steps to career success 1. Heading level 6 your passport to career success. Heading level 2 career plan. Student name edit test student. Address edit 1 3 space L N. Address 2 edit.
I just wanted to point out before I leave this now that what this is, and this is a very this is a device that lets you go onto a web screen, and wherever you go to, it will read what's there. And if additional information is available on what's on there, like for example, right now we're filling out a form, it can automatically go from space to space in the form and can let you know about certain things that are there. It lets you fill out the form, and it'll read out what you're doing. So while it's somebody who's visually impaired can sort of make out the screen and can move to place on the form, and it'll read it to you, but it can also go into a more automated mode where it will go and find the next spaces and read them out. And there are controls that would let a person and somebody who's using this on a regular basis becomes very proficient with it. There are controls that let you speed it up. There are controls to go backwards and forwards. There's keyboard commands. So you're not, it's obviously harder to use a mouse if you can't see the screen, but keyboard commands. So this is the kind of thing that's available, but it requires that information be tagged properly in order to be usable. And that's what the rest of what we're going to talk about today is about. So we're going to focus today on PDF documents because, first of all, that's what most of what's out there in legacy documents are. When you're retrofitting documents, most people have PDF documents to work with. The same kind, but this is also similar principles apply to Word documents and to Excel spreadsheets and to HTML files and XML and all those other kinds of file formats that might be there. Just a quick note on the difference. PDF normally there's two different categories of PDF. One is PDF text documents, and then there's PDF image documents. PDF text actually has, when you look at a PDF at the file, the text is actually there. You can't edit it, you can't do other things with it, but the text is actually there, as opposed to PDF images, which are really, they're pages that have been scanned. It's really only an image of it there, and the text doesn't really exist. So that's another step, which we're not going to cover today. We're really talking about PDF text images, which already have the text behind it. PDF is really a subject of another webinar in the future. There's some general approaches to how you automate this process of retrofitting PDF files. One is you want to use the best electronic version that you have, which is if you have both images and text, you definitely want to use the text images, the text PDF files. If you have better images if you have better files, like you have Word files, or you have XML files, or you have electronic files that have more information on them, you would probably want to use those. But this is sort of assuming here that what you've got is the PDF document. Today, there are tools that get you what they would say most of the way there. We're going to describe what most of the way means and how, and is that usable enough, and how to improve on that. The example we'll use is what comes out of Adobe Acrobat. Actually has some very good accessibility tools that we'll show you what that does. But I think regardless of what automation is used, and whatever is out there, I think you'll see that everything needs to be tested and probably needs to be enhanced in order to be most usable. So what goes wrong? Let me just go a synopsis of the things that go wrong, and we'll see some examples of them. The most important, I think, is reading order. Most documents you have, like it's like if you think of documents you normally see, if it's all in one column, the reading order is trivial. It's just going to go down the page. But if you have a two-column document, well, how do you know where you go from one place to another? Think in terms of a newspaper. Where should your eye go next? At the end of a column, does it go to the top of the previous column? Does it go below? Does it go to the side? So reading order becomes a major issue when you're trying to automate these things. And a typical PDF file does not have the reading order in there. It depends on you visually to make those decisions. Another area is just other navigation lanes that tell you where to go next. So things like headings and lists are pretty important when you're looking at a document. When you want to look at go through a document quickly, you'll typically go through the headings. Or if you see a list of items, you know that you need to look at it in a certain order. If you noted in the previous, the reading demo we looked at, when it got to the form, it says there are 3 items below. The first is. So if it's tagged properly, a reading machine can tell you where you are on a list and where you are on a form. Tables are a whole major issue because tables really are all about what is the reading order and how do you know when you're going from cell to cell or from column to column or from row to row. Another category is images. Obviously, somebody who's blind can't see what's in an image. So what's typically needs to be done and what's required in most of the standards is to have alternate text. Alternate text is text that describes what the image is about. So even if you have something that works on an automated basis through an entire document, chances are that most images have not been described. That's something that you would have to do in order to make a document accessible. And remembering that a lot of people are not totally blind. The larger group of people are people who have visual disabilities. Font sizes and color are two areas that become very important. You know, even well-sighted people have trouble with some of the fonts that appear in documents. So there are standards on how big a font should be, and very often it needs to be increased to get to a reasonable point. Color is an issue because people have different, color blindness is very common in the population, and if you're depending on just color to tell you something, there is a given population who won't be able to tell. Green and red are very common, but there's all kinds of others, and we'll show some of that in a little bit. Forms, we looked at before. We'll show a form later on. Somebody who's disabled, how does he fill out a form? What kind of information needs to be there to be able to do that? Maps, charts, timelines are similar. We'll look at an example of a map in a little while. And outside of scope today, but how do you deal with math and chemistry? And remember, like in an educational environment, you have to make this information available to people who are disabled. How does somebody study a math textbook if he can't see? And there are approaches to that which are outside the scope of today's session. So now, the next few, we're going to go through a few example documents now. I'm going to turn this over mostly to Sergey, I think, to talk about Sergey and Leo. But what we have over here, and this is where you're going to see it from now on the document, a document on the left, the version document on the left, is one that was produced automatically. And the document on the right was one that was enhanced to include the coding that really would help in the navigation and the usability of the document. If you bear with me for a minute, I'm going to move some documents over. This is a document that was auto-tagged and sitting now in Adobe Acrobat. And this is the document that was enhanced. And want to walk me through this, or?
Hello. Basically, the difference between the automated tagging of the document and doing it manually, Adobe Acrobat cannot really detect all the elements of the file correctly. As you can see, many headers, which should have been headers in a document, were done as a paragraph. And in addition, it's not complete paragraph selected. Let's say a list also was not fully detected properly. In this case, Acrobat only selected 2 list items instead of all 8. This is when it comes to enhancing a document, you have to visually see the content and properly tag it. So assistive technology would be able to tell the end user what they're actually looking at. Are they looking at a header? Are they looking at a list? Is this a paragraph? How many items are in the list? So this becomes very important to properly identify each element of the page.
Yeah, let me just, for those of you not familiar, what we're looking at, these are two documents. You have the document, to the left of it is the tagging that is in the document itself that's being used for navigation. So you see the one on the left is all basically paragraphs. The one on the right has a lot more information on it. So the document on the left, if you put it through an automated reader, would work okay. It would just read that whole document, and line by line. But the one on the right would allow the reader to identify what the subject headings are, so you can go from heading to heading to heading, and it would identify where the procedures are over there. It would identify that this is a list of items. So you can see that, you know, if for a person who's disabled, well, the document on the left is better than having somebody just read it or not being able to read it. The document on the right, they'd be able to navigate. If they've got, you know, if they've got hundreds of pages to go through, which is sort of a typical workload that, you know, many people have in various kinds of environments, having the tag the way the document on the right is makes it feasible. On the left, it becomes a very difficult process. So I think that's just, you know, so, and this is what we call a simple document.
Right. It's the document on the left. It's probably enough for the person with visual disability, but it's not going to be enough for the blind, for totally blind person. The person won't see, won't hear when machine is reading this particular page. Won't hear what is the whole page about and what is coming next, and basically what to expect. And every paragraph, every sentence will be read in that order, but you don't know what's happening next. So this is very important for completely blind person to have proper order and properly identify elements.
So if one part is reading, the other part is navigation. And navigation is what we do naturally, but if you're not sighted or difficulty with sight, it becomes much more difficult. So that's really what happens, what needs to happen. Let me just see what I'm doing here. Okay, so let me move these out of the way, and I just want to go to the next slide here, and this one over here, we'll show you a slide deck that was turned into PDF, and this was produced. And first of all, notice when it went from the left to the right, one thing obvious is the colors got changed, and that's to make it more readable. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But also there's a lot of navigation that happens over here, where each of the, if you look down here, each of these is a slide, and we've identified what all the slides are and what the titles are, so the person can go through from slide to slide to slide, knowing what's out there, as opposed to what naturally comes out of the automation, which is just a bunch of just telling you there's list elements and sections without identifying what they are. Just going to go through. This is a table that's in this slide deck, and again you'll see this table in the slide deck. First of all, the colors were changed. The colors on the left, where you have a white and a very dark background, is a very difficult one to see in general. So that's not best practices when you're building things for a disabled community. It got turned into a higher, on the right side, is a higher contrast set of colors. It's black on a lighter color, which is much easier to read. The other thing that's really happened over here, this is not just a slide, but it's really a table. And help me out with the table over here.
And for example, in this case, you will see that the slide that was auto-generated for the tagging basically captured part of the table as figure, and some other part of the table captured as a table, but then it returns back to the figure and regular paragraphs. So when an end user would be using assistive technology to read this, they would completely miss the header part of the table, because it will simply say it's a graphic without any explanation what's on it. And then move on to the table and start from the middle of the table. This is a problem, because even if it will read this partial table, the end user will not have the whole picture of where's the header, what kind of header this is, what kind of column this is, what does it represent.
By the time you make this into a formal table, assistive technology is designed to be able to read through this in a proper order. If the setup is a proper table, it'll tell you there's a table coming up, this is the heading of the table, there are 3 columns, there are 12 rows, and let's look at the first row, let's look at the second. The first row, primary care, and the first column is 10.8, and the second column is 22. The next row is specialty care, 6.9, and so it'll give you all those cues, which makes it possible to read something. Whereas if the assistive technology software doesn't know it's a table, it's just going to go randomly through it. The table on the left, while it'll come back and say there's an image, there's another image. Primary care, does it notice a table? It does notice a table. It notices
the table, but it starts from the certain point. It doesn't know what the header is, right, and what it doesn't know the rest of it.
So if you have a public-facing site, for example, which is going to be read by thousands of people, or if you have letters that go out to an audience that is not cited, they really can't really navigate through this easily. They'll probably have to call and have somebody read it to them, whereas the column on the right will work with assistive technology. And I think what's happening as people become more and more used to, people who are in this category, this population, getting more used to using assistive technology, they actually prefer to be able to do it themselves than having to assist on somebody else. Just going back to that video with Stevie Wonder, where he said, it's just so great that I can read through this myself rather than having to find somebody to read all this private information to me. So all this is very important. So it applies to tables, it applies to all these other kinds of things. I think the next, let me just we'll show you another example now so before we leave this example, I just want to show you what happens with colors. Now this is a color chart, and this is a software that's available to you to show the top left corner is what a person with normal vision would see when they got that slide that we looked at. Then if you look, ironically, this is very small print, we're talking about larger font, but if you look at the top left corner of each one of these, you see what differences, how a person with this particular visual difficulty will be able to see. These are different kinds of color blindness, different sensitivities to color, and you can see that while a sighted person can see this fairly well, person with pretanopia, and I don't know what that is, this becomes a very low contrast kind of thing. It's very difficult to read. The one below here is somebody with cataracts. And you can see as somebody with cataracts, although they can make things out, it becomes blurry. And certainly if the font gets smaller, they won't be able to see it. And even here in a low contrast environment, they can't see it. Now the next slide is is one that's corrected for color that's easier to see. And you can see that this was that next slide that we showed. This is how it would be visible to people with those same kind of conditions. Because the contrast is much higher, it's much easier for them to see. And the test programs that are available to check for 508 and other kinds of disabilities will point out when this is off. And even some of your cataracts, this becomes much easier to read because of the higher contrast. The next sample, and there's two more samples we're going to look at. One is just how would a table work? And this is a table.
A form.
This is a form, I'm sorry. This is a form that was automatically converted, not bad. Where's the other table? Lost my other table, just a second. I think this is it.
Yeah, this is the one.
This is a table as it's been enhanced. The form enhanced so that it's easier to work with. And I mean, maybe just go through the enhanced form first. I mean,
we can
let's just go through it. Yeah. Over to you.
Okay. Just quickly to point on the left, what came out of Acrobat automated pre-tagging. Basically, one of the fields was completely missed, as you see the second line. Then there is a whole row we're supposed to have checkboxes, which allows to answer yes or no. They weren't tagged as proper checkboxes. They were done as basic text fields, and those not allow to select just one value, yes or no. Then there is another field.
Sorry, I just screwed you up.
Okay.
Okay, there. There. Okay.
It's okay. Then there is another field, and it was missing middle data on the middle. So in the form, what you see on the right, all fields were done in a proper order, and in addition, whatever supposed to be checkboxes, which allows select just single value, yes or no, they're now properly tagged. And the person, we're not going to show here, but when you're using reading technology, it will allow person just go with the tab from, even for the blind person, from field to field, and technology machine will gonna read what has to be input in this particular field. And this will make easier and available for the blind person to fill out form on their own.
Right, and we don't have time to go through a full. I mean, but the assistive technology software will go through field by field, because now it's named, and it wasn't when you go automatically. If you look over here on this left one, they're just called paragraph, not necessarily named. Here, everything is named, so it can go through and say next field name, next field last four numbers last four social security number, next field telephone. You can back up to a previous field, and you can put in things like we just said, a ranger button, like are you a veteran? This has to be filled in either yes or no. You can't fill out both. I don't want that. That's the thing with live demos, things happen. Are you an employee? So all these things can get settled. You can see where this becomes important on publicly available forums. I mean, the forum that comes out here will raise all kinds of questions, where with just a little bit of care when setting these up, these can become forms very easily that can be used by a very large population who normally would not be able to use it. Okay, let's move this out of the way, and I showed just the last one. Which is a map, and this one goes over here. This is the live one, and this is also really part of a slide sequence with maps done of different floors of this facility. And what happens, and this is really going back to when we said, remember we said that when you have a figure, you have to have alternate text. So alternate text is going to describe all this. In this case, all we did, this doesn't have any of that. I mean, obviously somebody whose print is who's low vision or blind cannot use this. It's not so easy even to use a sighted person to use it without a description. But what we've done over here is added alternate text in back that describes what this map of floor B has on it. And this is a description that was written to describe what's on here, so that you can please. It's not that easy to follow. There's a lot of stuff on here, but at least somebody can follow this. And each floor got its own description. This is a more complicated floor. It's a much longer description. This floor over here is this description. This floor has a floor description. In particular, you probably want to highlight things like where emergency exits are and things like that. Now you can see that on a map like this, you might want to, this is what was done for this particular set. But when you have maps or charts or timelines or things like that, you could also pin descriptions a lot of times to specific points. Here it's just the same thing in every one of them, but you could pin down to it, this is an emergency exit, this is another emergency exit, and you could go those kind of things, and you could technology can let you go from point to point to point. So you can see, so just as a follow over here, adaptive technology is really getting better all the time, with much more sophisticated capabilities. So if this material is tagged to as finely as possible up front, as the technology develops, it's still, the investment it's made is still worthwhile and can be used as things go along. So that's a demo portion of that. We've gone through a lot, and it's really there's a lot going on over there. There's some resources I've put together over here. First of all, there's the web page on our website, which deals with 508, and has resources, and it's going to be enhanced over time with a lot of additional material. The Access Board is the federal agency that's tasked with making federal documents more accessible. It's got information over there. I found the VA, Veterans Organization, has a big interest in lots of people who are coming to the public-facing site, and they have a very good site that talks about how they go about supporting things. For non-federal materials, Accessible Books Consortium deals with, for the publishing industry, Make Your Documents Accessible. That's a Microsoft organization. DAISY organization is for various kinds of educational materials, and Adobe is a PDF accessibility information. So all those are useful. There's a lot more out there, and I hope over time to make some of those information more available on our website also. And that's the end of this broadcast, or at least the prepared version. I'm going to turn, ready for questions, and I'll turn it over to Adam if there's any questions that have come in.
Well, thank you, Mark, Leo, and Sergey. This has been a very informative webinar indeed. We have several questions that have been submitted. The first one is, and it's rather long, as for image alternate text, I heard that the screen readers do not read over a certain length of text, and you seem to have a very long alt text. Does that work with screen readers and PDF?
So I'm not sure. There may be some. There's a whole variety of screen readers out there. I think you sort of have to test that. There may be some limitations. I think these work with that, but it may be that it doesn't work on all screen readers. I know when we work with them, we have to test multiple environments. So there may be limits. I'm sure there are some limits out there. I don't know. But I just from a human perspective, I have to come back and say that some of those seem overly long to me from what I would like there. And I think this, and my preference would be to split those kind of things up into multiple alternate texts. So I'm not sure that answers the question, but I think the best practice would be to keep them to a certain limit, and much of that I think is a human limit more than sometimes the machine.
Right, but just keep in mind that the blind person doesn't see what we see when we're looking at this PDF, when we see much more information with a shorter description. The blind person totally rely on what is this alternative text has. So this only, like so far we didn't see any limitation with the readers, but as Mark said, it's best practice to keep as short as possible.
Yeah, these images were actually submitted and tested and approved.
Yes.
So they went through a whole, these correct images we're looking at now,
with different readers.
With a different reader, which is all courtesy of the Veterans Administration. They're available on their website, actually. All went through and were tested on a wide variety of readers. So what you saw there will work.
Great. Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Mark. The next question has come in is, which document creation software are you using that allows you to pin descriptions to specific points in the image?
So, well, we didn't do it over here, but if, what?
Adobe Acrobat.
So Adobe Acrobat lets you do that.
Right, Adobe Acrobat is allowing to do some pre-tagging. So whatever in our examples, whatever you saw on the left side of the screen, this was done totally with Adobe Acrobat without any human intervention. Whatever you saw on the right, it was whatever was done with Adobe Acrobat, and it was enhanced by a human being after that. So the short answer, Adobe Acrobat professional technology was used to create those pages.
For the automation. There's other software also, and there's some free software, pre-tagging that and we've built that can work with stuff, but automation takes you to a certain point, as we said, and that can be enhanced. And then, at least when you have unusual situations, some human effort is going to be required, we think, at this point. Automation will get better over time, but today there is some, the idea is to reduce the human effort, obviously, with a process.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. The next question has come in is, which specific screen readers do you make a point of testing?
Screen readers, we are using, first of all, internal Adobe Professional, just to quickly see what it reads, and if the document is okay as far as it goes. And then there is NVDA screen reader, there is a JAWS screen reader also, and for screen magnifiers, there's Windows Eyes, and there are a couple of other screen magnifiers that are being used to test the document.
There are more out there. Some of them publicly available and free. Some of them commercial product.
Right, but NVDA is a free one. JAWS is the two that are most common, NVDA and JAWS, and then there's probably a dozen others that are out there.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. We still have several more questions to go. The next one being, do you have examples where the retrofitting software has been used in a healthcare setting? For example, insurance forms, drug information, etc.
So, I mean, we've certainly done. I mean, these are just a few examples that are from publicly available forms, which is what we use. I mean, that other one is sort of a healthcare. That was having to do with, no, it was, I mean, there's lots of forms that are available. I mean, basically, what we looked at is a composite form that has a lot of the materials that are needed. I think actually, if the listener wants to send in a form for us to look at, we can comment on it and see if there's any things that are in or out of the bounds of what can be done.
Great, thank you. The next question that has come in is, when human intervention was done on the PDFs to the right, did you have to convert it to Word, PowerPoint, and then change colors, fonts, etc., and then convert it back to PDF with Acrobat? Or were
no.
you able to do, okay. Then the follow-up question would be, were you able to do all the modifications with Acrobat?
Yeah, all the modifications in this case were done with Acrobat.
Right. Generally, for PDF normal documents, you don't need anything else except Adobe Acrobat to make those modifications. All the colors can be changed. Usually, colors get changed on a text object, on the background object. When you start talking about the images in those PDFs, colors cannot be changed, and usually they go through as is. But all the manipulations, all the enhancement done in Adobe Acrobat, and it doesn't require any Microsoft products or any other products to be converted to and from.
Yeah, for all the things we've looked at, we haven't taken it back out and put it back in. It's just done natively that way.
Right. There's some examples when you have to go back to original publishing product, maybe like Microsoft Word or Frame or whatever. When the font is very small, there is no, you cannot change fonts in Adobe Acrobat without reflowing the PDF, without changing appearance of that PDF.
Right.
If you want to keep it intact, you have to go back to original product from which PDF was created.
Right. So font sizes would be one area
Yes.
that you really couldn't do very easily. You could do very small quantities of it.
Right.
But if you had large quantities, it's not practical to do it inside PDF. But the others are probably okay.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. The next question has come in is, this may be out of scope for the topic of retrofitting. For PDF generated from markup, how much automation can be used to add appropriate PDF tags? Is it close to 100%, provided that the XML tagging is adequate?
So this is actually an area we're looking at for various clients right now, because there's the issue of how do you deal with how do you get to 100%? So if you have control of how materials are generated or pre-processed, so I think you can put various information in that will, so that the automation will handle it correctly. But I think it's a case-by-case basis of what needs to be done there. So the answer is yes, but there's but exactly how to do it is going to depend on what kind of material it is, and that'll need some further investigation on the specifics.
Great, thank you, Mark. Several more questions. The first being, what happens with XML versus the PDF files we focused on today?
I mean, XML it has the opportunity to put in lots of tagging right in line inside the XML. Depends what you're using it for. I mean, but the movement these days, the movement in publishing in general for all kinds of materials has been to take XML files and flow them out to something that is accessible right away, like an HTML file. You know, you take the XML and on the fly turn it into an HTML file which goes on somebody's computer screen. So when you do that, if you properly design the process, you can put a lot of the tagging you need right into the XML directly, and the process then creates that on-the-fly HTML can automatically insert the navigational aids that we needed for a reader to do it. So, you know, once you're designing a process, maybe it goes back to the previous question, when you have the ability to design a process for future things, there's ways to lay it out so that it'll be a completely automated process. Much of what we've been talking about is how do you retrofit all those millions of pages that you might have there that need to get out there. But coming from XML or coming from you're creating documents originally in a Microsoft Word, creating documents originally in some other things, there's an opportunity to insert the right coding to be able to do all this navigation automatically.
Great, thank you, Mark. The last question that's come in today is, what about specialized objects like math and chemistry?
Right. So math and chemistry. I mean, when you're dealing with PDF, math and chemistry is usually just an image. So there's not much a reader can do with it, other than somebody typing up a description of the formula, which is a very tedious, lengthy process. Fortunately, there are solutions, but they're not inside the PDF file. Going back to XML, if a math formula is done in XML using something called MathML, which is a specific form of XML for math formulas, there are readers that can read that formula directly, just like the kind of reader we looked at before that will read the text. It'll read the formula with A over B times C, with a summation and all those other things. So there are forms of that. There's also a similar kind of reader that's available for chemistry. So, and there's ChemML, there's an XML version of a chemistry, and there's other ways of describing chemical formulas, and there are readers for some of them. So those are solutions that are very specialized solutions and would be very useful, I think, in a scholarly environment.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for that. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. This will conclude today's broadcast. You'll be able to access the recorded version of this webinar tomorrow from the webinar archive section of our website located at www.dclab.com. Also, our next webinar will be next Tuesday, July 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, titled The Challenge of Getting Discovered, being presented by Brian Trombley, National Account Director of DCL, and Leo Belchikov, Senior Project Manager, DCL. Again, thank you everyone for attending and have a great day.